How to ignore the 3D while manifesting. We all hear a lot that we need to ignore the 3D when manifesting. There's a good reason why. But I know from my clients that a lot of people think that ignoring the 3D is also done in the 3D, that you should be living your life, your life in the physical reality differently because you pretend that the 3D is different, and that can cause problems. It can't be done always. There are probably some situations where you can do it, but there are definitely a lot of situations where you can't pretend the 3D is not there. And I have good news, that's not how it's done. All of you who are experienced with manifesting, you probably already guessed what I'm going to say, but stick with me because I promise you it's going to be good. Before I start talking about the 3D and how to ignore it, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and help me spread this wonderful message that we are all powerful and we all create our realities, and that's actually whether we like it or not, which maybe is the place to start with this one also. Because, big surprise, imagination creates reality. If you are familiar with Neville Goddard, the law of assumption, Joseph Murphy, you know that your 3D reality is created by your imagination. In other sense, again, imagination creates reality, meaning the physical reality, and your physical reality can only exist because of your imagination, which means that you physically can't experience something that you didn't manifest. Now, this can be confusing, but this is actually good news because, for example, for a lot of people who are manifesting their SP or a better money situation, if you become aware of the fact that the current version of your SP that you are experiencing, or the current version of your finances that you are experiencing, is also your manifestation. It's not because some bigger force did it to you and now you're manifesting something else. It doesn't work like that. You either manifest one version of the situation or you manifest a different version of the situation. In any case, everything you experience is your manifestation. And this means that the 3D is powerless in the sense that you created it through your imagination. Even though, we experience the 3D also from the 3D, I hope this makes sense because, for example, for us in our human experience, it looks like we applied for the job, therefore we got the job. But then sometimes you apply for the job and you don't get the job. When you are aware of the fact that that job that you got or didn't get was a manifestation of your mind, maybe even through application, because that is also an assumption. Maybe this should be a topic for another video because you experience things the way you assume. Or, for example, with the specific person, that there is this very common belief that certain things need to happen in certain ways before, for example, you can get married, that you can't get married overnight. And I'm always here to ask why. Who made that rule? Because if you can imagine it, you can manifest it. Therefore, in order for you to experience anything in the 3D, you need to go back to your imagination and to yourself. Yourself is your imagination, is your non-physical self. In your imagination, there's included, for example, visualization or conversations, affirmations, which are thoughts, feelings, which are in reality a manifestation of your thoughts, visuals, imaginal acts. They do create a feeling state in your body because It needs to calibrate with what is going on in your mind. Again, this is a topic for another video. But in order to understand why you need to ignore the 3D and how to ignore the 3D is exactly that the 3D exists because you imagined it. Whether or not you applied for the job, whether or not you contacted your specific person, whether or not you had or didn't have an argument, it means nothing unless you have an assumption about it, unless you have a story going on about it, that just because I said that thing, now they don't like me. Turn it around. It doesn't mean what you said. If you assume that the person likes you, they're going to like you regardless of what happened in the 3D. Therefore, when you start trying to fix the 3D, it never really works, and a lot of times it backfires, because no matter what you do in the 3D, your assumption is going to manifest regardless. So this is why I always tell my clients, don't have the conversation with your specific person, for example, about the problem. Even if your person understood you, they apologized, they promised you that it's going to be different, blah, blah, blah. How many of you have you not seen that not happening? Repeating the same cycle over and over again. And it happens because no matter what you do in the 3D, your assumption is going to manifest still. So therefore, fixing the 3D is what Neville Goddard calls 3D manipulation, and going against the very nature of things. This is also his sentence. And another example that I love, again from Neville Goddard, is he says, and this is not his, by the way, this is a very, in every spiritual book with any spiritual teacher, even if it's not the law of assumption, if you go to the Eastern philosophy, a lot of them say this, use this same analogy, that the physical reality is the mirror of your inner reality. And therefore, when you're trying to fix the 3D, you're fixing the mirror. It's not helping. Therefore, you need to ignore the mirror. This was what I was getting at with all this long explanation about fixing the 3D. And I wanted to talk about also fixing the 3D, because that is what we're used to. That is what we do. That is what we have done all the time. There's a problem, you solve it. There's a problem, you talk about it. There's a problem, you do something about it. But the problem is there because we imagined it first. We feared it. We had a feeling, we had a thought, and then that got out of proportions. And now we are experiencing the problem in the physical reality. You need to fix the problem there where it was created. And therefore, ignoring the 3D doesn't mean don't do your house chores now because you're manifesting a better house, or you're manifesting more money and other people doing your chores for you, or don't drive your car to work because you're manifesting a different car. You see how that's not going to work, or you can't pretend the 3D is not there. In the 3D, I always say this to all my clients and to everyone I talk to about the law of assumption. In the 3D, you do everything you need to do in the 3D, because the 3D is there. You need to deal with it. You need to do something. You need to go to work for a period until you manifest your abundance. You need to, fit your current clothes. You need to wear your current clothes until you can fit a different size of clothes, right? Until that manifests. So therefore, don't get fixated too much on what you need to do in the 3D or not do, or pretend, not pretend. The place that the 3D needs to be ignored is the place where the 3D was created, which means in your imagination. So, what it truly actually means to ignore the 3D is Live your 3D the way you live, but don't dwell on it. Don't dwell on the current problems. Don't dwell on the current situations, even if your current reality doesn't include particular problems, but you are manifesting something different, and your manifestation comes from your imagination regardless. Therefore, don't imagine your current situation. So, because a lot of people don't realize they actually do this, that you check in with yourself, see how many times during the day you don't imagine that you imagine the current reality, that you have conversations in your mind about the current reality, that you imagine the things the way they are instead of imagining the things that you want, the things the way you want them to be. Ignoring the 3D happens in your mind. Manifestation happens in your mind. Everything that you do manifestation-wise happen in your mind. Even like, again, applying for a job and getting the job, even if you do something physically, it's your assumption that manifests. Applying for a job, was your application good? Do you feel good enough? Do you feel prepared? Do you feel worthy? Do you feel this and that? That's what's going to manifest the job for you, not the act of applying for it. When you talk to your SP, or when you do, okay, let's take the SP example. When you talk to your SP, it's not the conversation itself that's going to make things different. It's your assumption about you, about the person, about the situation, about whatever else that's included in that situation that's going to manifest anyway. So therefore, ignoring the 3D happens in your imagination, just like creating. Not a good word, manifesting the 3D happens from your imagination. So therefore, conclusion, ignoring the 3D doesn't happen in the 3D, it happens in your mind. Make sure that you don't take the 3D with you in your imagination, in your imaginal acts also. And here I don't just mean ignoring the 3D, but also when you do your specific techniques, you live in the end, you have started becoming aware that you need to ignore the 3D in your mind, and you do it. But sometimes what we do is, when we create a visualization scene or an inner conversation or whatever technique we use, affirmations, etc., we tend to create it based on the 3D limitations. Sometimes we do take the 3D with us in our imagination, and that's limiting and completely unnecessary. This is also a way of ignoring the 3D. You don't have to take into consideration any 3D circumstance or any 3D limitation when you are imagining. So when you go inside your imagination, you are actually completely free from all 3D limitations, 3D circumstances. And we are only limiting ourselves by imagining those limitations, also acknowledging the problem that needs to be solved, and doing all those conversations, how things are being solved. Don't waste your energy on that. Go to the end. Go directly to the end. Stay there. Even if you are manifesting a beautiful big house and you live in your apartment, you have to clean your apartment. You have to do things in your apartment, so you do become aware that in the 3D you're there. But in your imagination, you can't be somewhere else. And that is what you should do. And that is basically what is meant by ignoring the 3D. Ignoring the 3D is ignored in your mind, not in the 3D, because also your 3D actions are not so important and not powerful. Again, unless you have an assumption about what you're doing, or still the same assumption about the situation that will manifest regardless of what you're doing in the 3D. So this was the video for today, and how to ignore the 3D and how not to. Don't go manipulate the 3D. Don't change stuff around in the 3D. That's useless. Do it in your mind. That's the foolproof way of manifesting anything, changing any situation. And stay tuned, because I promise you that I'm going to talk a lot more about the 3D related anything. 3D stuff, 3D actions, and of course everything related to manifestation, and in a practical way so that you can apply it to your manifestations right away. There's no need to complicate it, because the law is not complicated. The law is of assumption. Whatever you assume, it's going to manifest. And what we are talking about is how to get to the point to assume something. And that can be done. It's not always easy, but it is simple. So, and I think that's sort of my mission here on YouTube, to keep it simple, keep it practical, because again, no need to complicate anything. I'm starting to repeat myself. So I really hope this was helpful and powerful, I guess. I really hope that this was inspiring. And once again, subscribe to the channel and see you in the next video.